What's up, witches? Here's a look at some bonus behind the scenes footage from this week's episode of the BetterWitch podcast. So I'll just start, yapping away about mediumship, but I gave myself a few notes when I was thinking about talking specifically to you about this, because you do so much work around educating and helping people take the skills that they have and really turn them into tools, and before the episode, people will have your bio, so they'll know more about what you do and how you help people. But I really love the idea of someone who is tapping into a skill, whether it's mediumship, psychic abilities, etc., and how scary and uncertain that can be. And having someone say, you can take this kind of scary thing that you are going through and turn it into success, turn it into money, turn it into prosperity. And I just really love your message and how you take something that might be a little bit like, this is a lot, into turning it into something great. I love transmutation. I just love that.
The other thing I want to just throw in that just came to me that Darcy said, this is a good point, you should tell them, is a lot of people, if your spirit guides aren't giving you a name and you're like, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? We associate names because it makes sense for us. It's easier for us to identify with names, but they actually, most of the time, if we don't know them, they don't go by name. Like, they don't care. They're a frequency. Like, they're male, female, like they don't really don't care what you call them. And so we take names because it's easier for us to identify who they are. And so I would say, ask again, if they're not giving you a name, just ask. And then, allow something to come through, give them a name. There's been times where that little boy, I was like, Steven, like, I didn't know his name. So I was like, your name's Steven. I'm calling you Steven. And he was just like, okay. And it resonated. So I was able to connect in, because when I called him in and I told him, this is what I'm calling you, it's just like when you give a nickname to someone, right? So if your guides aren't giving you a name, associate a name, and it'll be easier for you to connect to them too, not just feel like I'm just talking to air and I'm talking to nothing. And so give them a name. It will help you. The other last thing that I want to say too is, when your spirit team is talking to you, they're going to talk to you in a language that you understand. And so if it sounds like it's in your head, or it's, you're making this up because it sounds like your own voice, that's how it goes, right? Spirit's not going to talk to you in a way that you don't understand, because you're not going to get it. You're going to look past the message, right? So it is going to sound, if you're clairaudient and you get messages through your hearing, like I do, it sounds like your own voice. It's going to sound like, a message that you probably made up in your head, but it's not. So this is really about learning to just accept and acknowledge when there's a beautiful thing that comes through, a message that, again, was something that just was like that aha, or just came through, which is always so exciting.
Thank you for that breakdown, because I think that getting in touch with your guides and also naming them is something I hear, people talking about quite a bit, and like a little bit of frustration around that. Like, I don't know who my guides are. I want to identify them. I want to know their names, etc. How do I figure that out? So thank you so much for pointing out how you can do that. And I had received some sort of similar advice in the vein of like the whole them talking in your voice thing. And it was actually by the same witch that like breathed life into the whole like BronxWitch existence. So shout out to her. But she has mentioned in some of her classes that you can ask spirit to communicate in different voices if that would help you, because she was like, they do tend to communicate in your own voice, and it can be hard to understand the difference between that and your own speaking to yourself or thinking to yourself. So if that's a problem, you can ask spirit to name itself. What is your name? And you can ask it, can you talk to me in a different voice? I don't understand. It's hard for me to receive your messages. Can you talk to me through these types of signs or symbols? Can you show me, like you said earlier, the number 1? Can you, show me these types of symbols or numbers, or etc. So that is something too for folks out there. If you feel like you can't distinguish between your own voice and the voice of a guide or spirit communication, you can talk to them about that problem, and see if there's a way that they can change how they communicate with you to like make things a little more clear.
Well, and it's the same thing. That's exactly right. You get to decide how the relationship's going to go. And it's the same thing when my clients come to me and they're like, Spirit's waking me up at 3 a.m. and it's driving me crazy. Like, stop. I'm like, well, then tell them to stop. Tell them that that's not the time to give you a message, that you're available for messages throughout the day, but that's not the time that you desire to receive messages then. It's just like when I say, okay, Darcy, I'm going out in public. I'm turning off now. Leave me alone. Let me do my thing. Right. Like you get to decide, like you are the leader, right? Stepping into that leader, you're the leader. And so that's, like you just said, is like, you can tell them, talk to me like this. You can say, does this name resonate with you? This is what's coming through. Does this resonate? Or what do you want me to call you? Right. Like you get to ask them these questions. And that's why I said, like, asking questions is the most powerful thing. And as long as you continue to foster that relationship, they'll give you what you ask for.
I want to go back to what you just said, but before I lose it, another thing that like just came to me about talking to your guides, guys, is if you are someone who talks to yourself, like really talks to yourself, like I did as a kid, I would have full-blown conversations, and my mom would like be hearing me from the bathroom door, and she'd be like, Alysha, who are you talking to? And I'd be like, oh, no one. As I got older, I realized that I was talking to someone. If you are like that and you really have like full blown on conversations when you are by yourself, stop and ask Spirit who you're talking to. You have been told by people your whole life that you are talking to yourself. You probably say it about yourself. Oh, I talk to myself all the time. I'm just talking to myself. And you dismiss it as just talking to yourself. I invite you to consider that you are not just talking to yourself, and entertain that and actually speak to that energy like it is somebody there, and see what happens. Because I think you might end up identifying that this whole time you've actually been talking to one of your guides. You just didn't have a name for them or a way to identify that that's what you were doing. And you'd been told from a child that you're just talking to yourself. So you just embrace that and never let yourself really open up to the idea that you're speaking to your guide all the time. So that's just out there for all the people are like, oh, you just talk to yourself all the time. You may not just be talking to yourself. You may actually be tapping into something that's with you, and that would be a great place to start.
Absolutely. It's just like, it's just like having imaginary friends when you're little, and you just like, and so many kids haven't had imaginary friends, and you're talking out loud, or you're talking to them, or you see them. You were seeing a guide. Most likely you were seeing a guide, and you just, no one understood, or no one had the resources to be able to say, you're connecting to Spirit. So,
Now to go back to what you said about telling Spirit, I don't want to talk to you right now, or this is not the time, setting up a designated time. And that type of control over the interaction with Spirit, I think, really helps to have that relationship. Like you said, like if you are having spirits visit you at times that you are not wanting it, or, under circumstances that are scary or weird or what have you, if you have, let's say, an altar, or you have a sacred space, or you have somewhere where you have designated as like the time and the place for your spirit communication, that can help you kind of regulate the wayward spirit. You can be like, look, this is where I honor spirits. I'm happy to honor you and include you in my life and talk to you. But we do that like under these circumstances at this time and this place and stuff like that. And I think that sometimes people are like, there's no way it's that easy. Like there's no way you can just like tell Spirit what to do. But it really is. But thank you, witches, for checking out the behind the scenes footage from this week's episode. Tune into YouTube every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern for a new episode, and definitely join us right after that episode airs for a Coven-only live Q&A with our guest co-host. And make sure to leave a review of the BetterWitch podcast on your favorite podcast platform. See you next time. Blessed be.